Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the first meeting of the DOGE Task Force. Thank you all for being here today and appreciate the committee members that are with us. We recognize there's several of them online as well. So we do have a quorum to meet today. I'm just going to make a few introductory remarks, and then my co-chair, Senator Lakey, will have some things, and then we'll jump right into the agenda today. And we have a pretty nice agenda for us. So first of all, it's been a while since something like this has been undertaken in the state of Idaho. At least 20 years, maybe more, some say even really since the 70s, since there's been a true undertaking like this. And while we've seen some examples at the federal level, particularly with Elon Musk and his crew and other states, I think we're going to do it our Idaho way, and which might look a little different than what you've seen in other states or other examples, but I think we're going to do what's best for the state. When this committee was first announced a few months ago by legislative leadership, they put forward three broad areas of focus, which will be our focus, which is looking at agencies and divisions and departments for reduction, consolidation, or elimination. Second, looking at state employees for efficiencies and other things. And third, looking at state travel. Now, that might not be the only thing that we look at here. The committee members will likely have some other ideas, and we may discover other things as part of this, but we don't want to spread ourselves too thin. We also anticipate this being a multi-year activity. There's a lot to look at, so we do intend to do a lot in this interim with the goal to really have some legislation and policy brought forth from this committee that we can implement in the next legislative session. So we actually want to get results from this committee and be results oriented, and then look into next interim as well, maybe digging deeper or taking a couple other topics that we can explore further. With that, we also are going to invite public input, and as you've seen today, we have time for public testimony, both virtual and in person. And I do want to announce a website that we've put up at the legislative website. It's legislature.idaho.gov/DOGE. And if you look there, this will be a place for the public to provide their input. So if you're a member of the public and you have ideas or things that you're aware of or that you know, for government says duplication, waste, or inefficiencies, you can make that submission. So we have it set up where you can, if you want to be contacted, you can leave your contact information. Or, for example, if you just want to submit anonymously, maybe there's a state employee that's worried about retaliation but knows something. This is another resource or avenue for them to reach our committee and for us to see these ideas. So we're inviting public input here as well. And we hope to take the best ideas and implement them. We intend to work hard as a committee and get results. With that, Senator Lakey is my co-chair. Senator, any remarks you'd like to give?
Thank you, co-chair. Appreciate those comments. I'll echo a lot of that. I look forward to this committee. I think it's an opportunity. Efficiency can mean different things for different people, but what I particularly appreciate, we don't corner the market individually as legislators on good ideas, and we have an opportunity to hear from the public. We have the website set up. Certainly we're going to have to prioritize and figure out what has the group's support, but that's and the time. But that's one of the things you learn as you're here. As you serve, you have to get other legislators on board to support ideas moving forward. So this is an opportunity to build a core group of folks. If we agree on something, it provides that momentum. As an individual legislator, you can shake your fist in the wind, but unless you get everybody else to shake the same fist in the same wind, you're not going to go anywhere. And this is also going to be interesting in that, at the federal level, we see President Trump and Elon Musk working at the executive side of things. We're the legislative side of things, but we may have executive ideas that we need to work with the executive branch. We're going to have ideas that may fall in the lane of certain germane committees and need to work that process as well, whether it's Commerce or JFAC. And myself, for example, I have a lot of interest in some of the occupational licensing, making it easier for people to practice their occupation. And I see this as another opportunity to help with that agenda. But I really look forward to the process. Appreciate we've got some good legislators on this committee and look forward to working with them and hearing from the public. Thanks, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Senator Lakey. With that, we're just going to jump right into the agenda. The first thing we're going to do have is an overview from our Legislative Service Office, in particular Jared Tetro. He's going to help us get our arms around the size and scope of the state government currently. So we want to review the state agencies, departments, boards, and commissions. And committee members, just for your benefit as we go through this, if you have questions, please raise your hand or turn on your mic or virtually let us know so we can get those answered. Mr. Tetro is willing to answer questions, and he also told us if he doesn't know the answer, he'll do homework and get back to us. So if you could introduce yourself for the record and then go ahead and make your presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this on? For the record, Jared Tetro with Legislative Services Office with the Impact Review Team. First time having to say that one. I just came down from the Budget Division for those that may not have worked with me. So thank you, Co-Chair Ehlers. Yes, I'll be speaking to you on a decent amount of the history and where we are today. But as you mentioned in your opening remarks, the legislature has taken many efforts over the years with various reforms, criminal justice in the 90s with Senator Darrington and others. But to this level, it's been, I think, since the 70s that at least I was able to find. So for today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the history, look at some of the constitutional amendments and some of the actions that the legislature has taken, and then dive more into what is our current structure? What are the kind of some of the main driving factors when it comes from our Constitution, limiting number of executive branch entities from an organization standpoint, a little bit of Idaho code, and then looking more at the structure. And a lot of the agencies that I'll talk about today, I've left in as it pertains to an appropriation bill, as these will be agencies you're familiar with. At no point is this exhaustive. I do have a 200 plus entity handout that I'll be giving out shortly. And we will go for, as well as a spreadsheet at some point very, very soon. So to start, the most recent major reorganization effort took place with passage of Senate Joint Resolution 132 of 1972 session. This was a bipartisan drafted resolution, 5 Republicans, 5 Democrats. It was initially pushed by then Governor Cecil Andrest. It was put before the legislature supported it, and the people passed it 60 to 40% with almost every county voting in favor. That resolution added a constitutional amendment that said the legislature will pare down the 268 agencies and put them within 20 departments. It didn't say to go to 20, but to make sure that for the purposes of government efficiency from a citizen standpoint, to make sure that the people knew how to find what they needed within government. That was the goal. The goal at the time was, according to one of the sponsors, was not necessarily to reduce state employees or to save money as much as make government better for people. That was the idea. And you'll hear this a lot. You'll hear it when you work with staff up in the budget is you're either a lumper or you're a splitter. And depending on how you feel government should be, you're going to create big agencies where you're going to kind of put a lot together. Think of health and welfare. Or you're going to be kind of what we call a splitter, where you're going to want lots and lots of little agencies to get to just that individual topic. And I'll have more examples as we go forward. Some other documented reorganization actions. In 1919, the legislature did the same thing, but without a constitutional amendment or without direction from the governor. They said, government's getting too big. We need to consolidate. We need to look and make sure we're being efficient. 1949 and in the mid-60s, the legislature appropriated funding in both cases to study reorganization. We weren't able to find any actions that came from either of those studies. And if we could do one of those studies for those prices today, that'd be fantastic. So, Article 2, Section 1, Idaho Constitution. This says there are 3 branches of government. The first and the best branch, the legislative branch. Followed by the legislative would be the executive, and then the courts. So that's, you guys set the rules. You determine what game will be played. You determine how it'll be played. The executive branch has to then play that game, and the judicial, they're the refs. They're going to determine if it's being played correctly. Again, very high level. I know there's a couple of attorneys on here looking at me going, where's he going with this one? But that's the idea. This branch, you determine Idaho code, you determine the rules, you have a lot of power when it comes to how government runs. It's in your court to make those decisions. Article 4, Section 20. This is the constitutional amendment that I was just referring to. And that amendment gave the legislature 2 years to do so. What it said is take your 7 constitutional officers, set them aside. So the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, those 7, they are not to be counted as part of the 20. Every other organization of the state, board, council, bureau, department, division, all the subunits had to be placed within one of those 20 with a couple other exceptions. And so that was, again, to make it easier for the people. That's what that amendment did. Which leads us to, and then, Idaho Code. 672402, that's where you're going to find the list of the 20. And in your presentation, in your handout, I took a page from the legislative budget book, and it's going to show you those 20, and I'll get to those in just about a slide or two. Those 20 departments, by law, then have divisions, bureaus, and functions within. You may also hear of programs or budgeted divisions. Just because an agency is organized one way, the legislature has still chosen to budget and track and report in other ways. Again, I'll use health and welfare as an example. If you ask the director of health and welfare how they handle behavioral health, he's going to say, that's my division of behavioral health. You're going to look in the budget book, you're not going to see a division of behavioral health. You'll see a division of mental health services, further broken out into adult and children. You'll see psychiatric hospitals, you'll see substance abuse. The legislature said, we recognize and understand your organization. However, when we're spending money and we're giving money, the legislature wants to make sure that that's accounted for and that we know where it's at. And that made it easy for the legislator at the time, and we're still in that phase, that's how we want to track the dollars. So again, you can lump it up into one big level or you can separate it down into more detailed levels. That's the choice the legislature has every year. Idaho Code, as you know, it's the primary structure that outlines all the responsibilities for every government entity and agency, with a handful of exceptions. This is where you'll find an agency is hereby established and they will do X, Y, and Z. They will have a board, they will meet quarterly, they will provide reports, whatever that may be. Statute's going to have just shy of everything. And if it's not there, it's going to be in the Constitution or a couple other places. For the purposes of this presentation, state agency, technically, in that legal sense, they're not an agency, they're a division or a subunit of a department. But when you have a conversation, you think of them as agencies. I took the definition out of House Bill 14, which comes from the Idaho Code Cleanup Act that was just passed, that says an agency, it's a department, a commission, a board, a council, an institution, a division, an office, right? It's something, some group of individuals that make government work in their respective lanes. So, how have agencies been established? How can they be established? Constitution and constitutional amendments. It's not as common, but does happen. Our Idaho Constitution does have references and creations for the Board of Education, the Board of Corrections. There are other agencies that have changed names over the years, but they are established within the Constitution, which means that the founders and or the people of Idaho up to this point have said, this is a unit of government that we want to make sure stays. Idaho Code. These are agencies that the legislature has said, we want. A Department of Parks and Recreation, Finance, Environmental Quality. They're set up in statute. Voter initiative. In the 1930s, the people said they want a Fish and Game Commission. And so they ran an initiative and they got it approved, and now we have Fish and Game. And then finally, in this one, I don't know if there are any others, but executive order. The Office of Energy and Mineral Resources was established through an executive order. Idaho Code requires it to be reestablished or reauthorized every 4 years. There are 3 references within Idaho Code to the Office of Energy and Mineral Resources, but there is nowhere in code that says there is hereby established. Rather, it's one member from the Governor's Office of Energy and Mineral Resources shall be a part of this lands board, or the Office of Energy and Mineral Resources must follow the state workforce laws when it comes to classified positions. But otherwise, it's been authorized and reauthorized since sometime in the 70s. I'd have to double check the exact date.
All right, we're going to pause you for a question. Representative Tanner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Tatro, I had actually looked into this as well. I was trying to go through each agency, especially a lot of the ones within health and welfare. And a lot of them actually go back to the actual creation of health and welfare, of why that they actually have authority to actually create some of these little sub ones. But when I was going through them, the Office of Energy and Mineral Resources, that was one that kind of shocked me because I couldn't find anything that actually was a creation of that. So if it is the executive order that actually had done that and the governor actually created that, I haven't had a chance to look at 67802. Does that give the legislature has to reauthorize that, or is that an executive order that just the governor would actually just continue to actually do that?
Mr. Tatro.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, the 67802 says that any executive order is good for 4 years and then expires unless reauthorized. So the current governor can't put the next governor into something longer than their term.
Representative Tanner.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on that. So, and I understand that aspect of it, but now you've also stated that it was within, in statute now multiple different times referencing it. Is that enough to keep it in place, or is that not?
Mr. Tatro.
Mr. Chairman, Representative, that's up to the legislature to decide if it's sufficient enough by having a reference within code. It's going to be up to you guys to decide if the executive order is sufficient enough. But I believe this was first established. It's in the budget book, I know that, but I want to say it was in like the 70s. It's been reauthorized many times over the years. And the legislature has funded it many times, every time, so.
Okay, thank you. Committee, any other questions or any online questions from the committee members? Okay. Nope, not seeing any. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So for the current structure, and this is the page that I borrowed out of the legislative budget book, we have Article 3. This is, again, the first branch. This is the legislative department. It's the House, the Senate, it's legislative council, who then hires and determines with Legislative Services Office and the Office of Performance Evaluations. Article 4, this is the executive branch. It's the big box. This is where you'll see those 20 departments. These are the departments as listed in Idaho Code. And this has changed over time. There have been times where we haven't had all 20. You may recall here when Department of Commerce and Labor were merged into one and then separated back out. You may notice, so Department of Health and Welfare, number 9. Department of Juvenile Corrections, number 11. And the Department of Environmental Quality, number 6. Both of those used to be a part of the Department of Health and Welfare. So if the legislature says we want to create a new department, then that means one of these has to change because you are capped at 20. And that's 20 organizational departments plus the 7 constitutional officers. That's not 20 agencies. And then you have Article 5, which is the judicial department of the judicial branch with the Supreme Court, Court of Appeals, administrative courts, and judicial council. So for the legislative and judicial, the legislature, you set your rules. You're bound by what the Constitution says you can and can't do. And the courts are in the same boat. They're bound by the Constitution and any laws set for them and their rules. They are separate branches. You are beholden to yourselves. The executive branch, this is Article 4 of the Constitution. Again, 7 constitutional officers. 6 of them, the governor, lieutenant governor, secretary of state, state controller, state treasurer, and attorney general, they all have an official office of. The superintendent of public instruction is different. Idaho Code says that there's hereby created the Department of Education as part of the board, which will be run by or overseen by the superintendent of public instruction. And so it kind of fits into a couple boxes. It fits into the superintendent box, and she also is in number 20 under the State Board of Education. There have been a lot of constitutional amendments and proposals over those years, but that's where we are today. The 20 executive departments, current counts, and the impact team, we are still going through a lot of code and a lot of documents trying to get an exact number. But right now we're looking at over 205 subunits within those 20. Divisions, boards, commissions, and again, you're a lumper or you're a splitter for lack of a better term. right? How many independent regulatory boards would you like versus putting them under a regulatory agency that does just everything? There's good and bad to both. It's just really what does the legislature at the time feel is the most appropriate way to ensure that people know where to go. And then there's also other governmental entities, and Idaho code specifically calls them out as not a state agency or department, but as an independent body, corporate and politic, or a single purpose district. And we were able to find about 26 of those. So within the executive branch,
Yeah. Go ahead, Senator Lakey.
Thank you, Mr. Tatro. Just following up on that last one, you mentioned there's 26 separate bodies, corporate and politic. Are those state-based or are they local government-based? And are you getting to enumerating those, or is that something we can get later?
Mr. Tatro?
Mr. Chairman and Co-Chair Lakey, I will get to those, but some of the examples, University of Idaho, North Idaho College, Lewis Clark State College, community colleges by definition, school districts, the state insurance fund, the public health districts, the state building authority, Idaho Housing and Finance, bond bank guarantee, just to name a few.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Tatro, just while we're there, so that's a list you can provide for us, correct?
Mr. Chairman, yes.
Okay.
I will have it to you very shortly.
Thank you. And then on the spreadsheet, I think we have discussed, and you brought it up here, for these, what we found, 205 subunits. I believe I previously requested a little more detail on those, kind of give us a size and scope, and maybe as we're talking about how they were created or where that authority came from. Is that still a work in progress?
Mr. Chairman, yes, we're working on it now. It is, for lack of a better term, a live document. We've built the presentation. We've got the handout I'll hand to you just a minute. We've got the spreadsheet moving forward. It's as we review code, as we're also doing the work for the Idaho Code Cleanup Act and a few other projects, we're finding little oddities within code where it says under the Department of Self-Governing Agency are these 25 or whatever the number is entities. But when we go to the individual statutes, we'll find the Horse Commission or Horse Board that says it's also part of the Department of Self-Governing Agencies, but it wasn't under the department's list. And so we're trying to just make sure we've caught everything. And there's a lot of sections to go through. So it's not quite ready, but we're really, really close on that spreadsheet.
Okay, thank you. We look
All
forward.
that other information, yes,
Yes,
sir.
look forward to seeing that soon. Okay, carry on.
Thank you. So I'll have a few slides that will break out the Office of the Governor, the Department of Self-Governing Agencies, and the State Board of Education. And then the handout will have all the others, but these three really kind of, a lot of subunits are found within those. So within the Office of the Governor, you have the official Executive Office of the Governor, Division of Financial Management, Division of Human Resources, the Liquor Division, Office of Drug Policy, Blind and Visually Impaired, the Military Division, STEM Action Center, the Wolf Depredation Control Board, and more. These are all agencies or subunits that the statute says are officially under the Department of or the Constitutional Office of the Governor. And again, this isn't exhaustive because there's a lot of commissions and boards and councils within all of these, and I have that list here with close to, I want to say it was 30 something for just the governor. Within the Department of Self-Governing Agencies, and this is the unique part about this department, is there's no single director. There's no director of the Department of Self-Governing Agencies. These are all agencies that are lumped together in that department by statute alone. So every one of these on the screen has their own either director, administrator, or version thereof in some administrative title. What I would point out, and going back to Co-Chair Ayler's opening comments, the legislature over the years will move agencies for a variety of reasons. The Division of Veteran Services, as I mentioned, used to be a part of Health and Welfare. The Library Commission and the Historical Society were both a part of the Board of Education. The Historical Society actually was referenced in our Constitution under a different name, but so they go back to statehood. You have the Division of Occupational Licenses. That was a consolidation done just a few years ago with medical boards and regulatory boards and other comparable type entities. Most recently, the Commission of Pardons and Parole. It was under the Department of Correction, and the legislature 2 years ago said, let's move this one to the Department of Self-Governing Agencies. And so it will have a little more independence from the Department of Correction when it comes to their operations and oversight. And then finally, the Department of, or the State Board of Education. You have the official office. Oh,
Before we go to that slide, I think we have a question on your last one. Representative Tanner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it wasn't so much what you touched on here; it was some of the other ones, and I know you briefly spoke on it, but there are several different agencies that there's a couple of them that are a private-public aspect, and I can't find anything that's actually constitutionally that really allows for a private-public entity. So the two that I can actually go off the top of my head would be public television, as well as, and it's probably they get private funds and they're getting public funds, and it's kind of a mix of things. The other one is the state insurance fund. You've got a private and a public mix that's going in there that's really hard to differentiate. Is it just because that we fund this that is the creation and have allowed them to kind of go down this road? I couldn't find anything that really allowed for a private-public functionality. And then the other two, we have some other groups that they're non-governmental, nonprofits in a sense. One of them still, the other one's DD Council that I can think of off the top of my head. But those two alone, I mean, they're advocacy groups that we're somehow funding through the state, and yet they're not. They are kind of a separate nonprofit entity. So are we seeing, do you see that with other states? Or are there ways that we can actually clean this up? Is there something constitutionally that allows that, or even through state statute that kind of, or is it just that because we fund it that they're authorized to do all that?
Mr. Tatro.
Co-Chair Ayler's, Representative Tanner, please jump in if I miss anything. As far as your reference with public television and then the privately donated dollars, I know that Parks and Rec also has a Friends of Parks and Rec, which is a similar situation where people donate money to help preserve the parks, and that money can go to help support that function. There are a lot of agencies and a lot of references throughout code that say private donations can be included within said fund. And so that's not actually anything unique for people to donate and then the agency to then spend. The agency is still subject to whatever laws and rules are required for them to do in their mission.
Yeah, just clarification on that.
Go ahead, Representative Tanner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I understand the park side, and those funds are actually going back to actually utilize the actual parks themselves. Both public television as well as the state insurance fund, they don't. They're actually operating two separate entities within it. So public television has the aspect where they do all the cameras and everything else within the state. But they also have their own public television aspect of it, and shows and news broadcasting and everything else that is a whole separate entity than the state altogether. Same thing with state insurance fund. They're insuring people outside of state government, as well as insuring everybody pretty much almost within state government. So they're a little bit, I get the park side of things, but these ones are too wildly different from a park and rec style donation to, these aren't donations. These are actual entities going out completely separate from the legislature, from what we're actually funding.
Mr. Tatro, any comment on that?
One thing I would add, Mr. Chairman, Representative, and I'll have to look more into how some of the other states and to more on your question, but with the state insurance fund, or excuse me, where was I? So they handle the workers' comp for more than others, just like Percy is an agency under the office of the governor, but you don't have to be a state employee to be a part of Percy. The statute, as an independent body corporate and politic for the state insurance fund, my understanding is it does include them to have more than just the state employees, and I have to go look more deeply. The Independent Living Council, you reference them, along with the Bureau of Educational Services for the Deaf and the Blind and the Idaho Digital Learning Academy, IDLA, they're all set forth in Idaho code as a single-purpose district. And so the statute has called those out under this special provision. And so insurance fund, independent body, corporate, and politic, there's, again, much beyond that, we're going to get me in trouble. And I would advise someone else more astute to that to come in, but the statutes outline everyone that's eligible to participate and everything else, so they should be covered under that front.
Another question, Representative?
Just more of, so any of those single-purpose districts, could you give me a list of every one of them, if you get a chance?
Mr. Tatro, can you do that?
Mr. Chairman, absolutely, have it to you in just a second.
Just a second.
Oh,
Okay.
perfect.
All right. Any further questions? Doesn't look like it, so let's go on.
Okay. And then the almost last slide, State Board of Education. They have the Office of the State Board. This is the staff, the Career Technical Education Division, Vocational Rehabilitation, which also includes the Council for Deaf and Hard of Hearing, as well as the Vocational Rehabilitation Agency, and up until recently used to include Extended Employment Services. The Extended Employment Services portion of ER was just moved over to Health and Welfare. So again, the legislature is always kind of looking to see how can services be better provided or better, right? That's the goal, shared with the people. And then finally, the Department of Education, which, as I mentioned earlier, kind of fits into a couple boxes because the superintendent is exempt from the 20, but statute also says is the director. So it's an elected director of an agency, for lack of a better term. And then you'll notice this does not include, again, colleges, community colleges, ag research, special programs, because budgetarily they're tracked separate from their institutions. But those institutions in code are independent body, corporate, and politics. So they don't technically fall under the board as a department. So looking at this chart, and I understand it's kind of small, you're going to see where these executive branch entities, and again, I'm only showing the executive branch entities. If the legislature wants to change its makeup or the judicial branch wants to, that's a different conversation. But for the purposes of this committee and the purposes of how government is run when it comes to it, that's pretty much executive branch. You'll see that I think we have 79 self-governing agencies. That includes every board and regulatory board within DOPL. Right, that's breaking it all out, from the Board of Medicine to the Board of Veterinary Medicine to dentistry, down to the Wheat Commission, the Office of the Governor, the list I had on the screen, as well as the Line Commission, the Roadless Rule Commission, and some others. And then the Independent Body Corporate, some others. These others are really, it's the Bear River Commission, the Constitutional Defense Council, the Columbia Compact Commission, right? They are a part of how government works and how decisions get made, so we've included them. And so we wanted to make sure that the information we provided is all of government in a lower G sense, right? It's how does government run? Why these commissions, these national compacts, they're not an entity, but the work they do, the conversations they have can lead to the impact of what an agency may or may not do moving forward, or legislation that may come forth. And so with that, I'll stand for any questions, and if not, I have a handout, if it's okay to approach.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do the handout, and then we'll look over it and probably have some questions for you. Is this available for our online committee members yet?
As long as my email went through.
Okay.
So to answer your question, yes, Mr. Chairman, as long as the email went through, the members online should have it. I have a fear that I may not have actually hit send, and it's just sitting on my computer upstairs, which I can get as soon as I'm done.
I see it now. So
Oh, did it
we
come
have
through?
a PDF of this.
Perfect.
Yes.
And the spreadsheet will be based off of this handout, and this handout will be posted on our website.
Okay. Committee questions. This is a lot to digest right here. That's a lot of.
And Mr.
So,
Chairman,
it's
I
good.
tried to color code it the best I could. So the orange, green, and then when I choose purple or a light purple, just to kind of keep those concepts together. And again, it's all just, these are decisions that your predecessors have made, or some of you have made, on how government should be organized.
Just to ask to the comprehensiveness of this list, so it looks like there are the agriculture commissions on here. You mentioned some other kind of quasi lowercase governmental ones. Is there anything else that doesn't fall under these umbrellas of departments, subunits, agencies that maybe should be listed? Or do you think we're pretty comprehensive?
Mr. Chairman, I would call this a version 1 draft document. It's as comprehensive as we could get to through our review of Idaho code using either our internal GEM system or a Westlaw, the appropriation bill process, the budget book, the blue book from the Secretary of State's office. We tried to capture anything and everything we could. There is a possibility we have a duplicate in there, one or two, sometimes with different names. For example, the Idaho Digital Learning Academy is how it's defined in statute, but reports and websites will call it the Digital Alliance. And so it's possible we missed one or two. And that's what we're doing right now, is going through statute and making sure that nothing got dropped, especially if it's just like an inconsistent use of a name between two sections of code. But we're still working on this, and that's why the spreadsheet isn't quite ready, is to make sure those code references are accurate, and we're really close.
Okay. Thank you, and appreciate the good work on this. Senator Lakey, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Mr. Tatro, so this is the working document that you were talking about earlier. The end product will have the applicable code sections for each of these?
Mr. Tatro?
Mr. Chairman and Co-Chairman, yes, and I can send that in a spreadsheet so you can hopefully search it a little faster for ones that you're really interested in. But yes, it'll be this with a few more columns.
And just,
Follow up?
yeah, and just to add some color, I did ask them to include if they have a budget, what the budget is for the most current fiscal year, if they have FTPs, so we can kind of see the size of these. But go ahead, Senator.
Thanks, Mr. Co-Chair and Mr. Tatro. Then one other maybe just aspect to add to the information that's included in this spreadsheet, some basic statement of purpose as to what that particular entity does, I think would be helpful.
Okay.
Mr. Tatro?
Co-Chair and Co-Chair will work on that.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Co-Chair. Representative Tanner.
Yes, I was actually just more curious, Mr. Co-Chair, Mr. Tatro, that, so I know we've got other commissions that are kind of out there, the Hispanic Commission, the Women's Commission. I know the commission, I think the only one that we're actually funding through the state portion of is the Hispanic Commission. Where does that fall under?
Mr. Tatro?
Mr. Chairman and Representative Tanner, the Hispanic Commission is under self-governing agencies.
Okay, just
And
Follow up
then
or further?
the,
Then do you have
Women's,
it?
the Women's Commission actually is under the governor. And while the legislature has not funded the Women's Commission in several years, it still is established in Idaho code. So rather than remove it from code, the legislature said, we're just not going to write an appropriation bill. But that's found under the Office of the Governor, as is the Personnel Commission. So we tried to include anything that might still be in Idaho code, whether or not it's intact or in use today. And then anything we weren't quite sure of is down in that other category, as we're still trying to figure out where to best put some of these folks.
Okay. Representative Tanner.
yeah, more just not even so much a follow-up, just more some stuff for Mr. Tatro to maybe bring back to this committee.
Sure. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one of the things that I've been looking at, so I've known our ITD division, the civil aeronautics. I'm looking for all the flights, so for all the state planes. I was going to see if maybe you can actually do that, and then also if there's any funds, because I know some of the state agencies are actually paid by other entities to actually take planes to an event or to an organization, and I'm just trying to figure out where that would actually be located at, or if there is any reporting that's actually being done on that. I couldn't find anything through Transparent Idaho, which I guess there's no funds being spent by it. There wouldn't be, but couldn't actually find anything through any of the organizations, any of the PACs filing that actually showed it as well. So I just was curious if you maybe could look into that, think about that, and figure out how we could actually kind of address some of that. The other portion of it was some of this continuous appropriation that's been hard to actually find. I know I found some of it, but things like the hospital provider tax that are kind of off books, that are just continuous appropriated, bringing those, I'm just trying to get an idea of kind of what dollars we're actually talking about with some of that and how to maybe potentially bring that back.
Mr. Tatro, any comment on that?
No, Co-Chair Ehlers and Representative Tanner, we'll look into that and see what we can find.
Okay. And for the benefit of the committee, we are going to compile these data requests. And you might not have them right now. We'll give you some time to think about it. And we'll get those, even if it's not today. We'll keep working on those and getting those compiled. Representative Scott is online and has a question. So go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Chairman and Mr. Tatro. I'm wondering, as you build this out, are you planning to do the judicial branch also? I understand the executive branch is the largest, but it is part of government, and I just want to make sure that we're at least keeping that in the purview also.
Mr. Tatro?
Co-chair and Representative Scott, if that's the will of the committee, we can, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Representative Scott, anything further?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you. Any more questions from our online committee members that we see? Or anybody in person? Okay. I'm sure we'll be pinging you with more questions as they come and as we digest this list and all that's in it. And we look forward to getting the additional details and the additional requests. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, committee, we're next going to hear from a remote presenter. This is Amy Fetcher. She's currently the executive director of the Arkansas Public Employees Retirement System, our PERSI essentially. But before that, she was part of, she actually led the team when Arkansas did a sort of a DOGE type experience. And so she's here to present, or actually remotely present, what they did and see if there's things that we can learn from based on the results that they got and what they did. So Ms. Fetcher, if you could just introduce yourself for the record, and then you can go ahead and make your presentation, and welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Co-Chair, and thank you to the committee members. My name is Amy Fetcher. I am, as you said, currently the director of the Arkansas Public Employee Retirement System. Previously, I was the Chief Transformation Officer under Governor Asa Hutchinson. I really appreciate the opportunity to share Arkansas's experience in the reorganization with the task force. And I can feel Mr. Tatro's pain when he says he's trying to locate all of those entities, because I felt much the same way when we first started it. Former Governor Asa Hutchinson's goal when he first came into office in 2015 was to create a smaller, more efficient government. If you can advance the slide. Well, what we had, what we called the 3 pillars of transformation: to create savings and efficiencies in both processes and funding, improve managerial support, and improve delivery of services to the citizens. This was the standard that all the transformation initiatives were held to. Next slide. So in 2015, during the first session when we came into office, the governor began with some small mergers. We took 3 smaller entities, the Department of Rural Services, the Arkansas Science and Technology Authority, and merged them into the Arkansas Economic Development Commission. At the time, I was director of the Department of Rural Services, and so I got to see the merger firsthand and got to lead the efforts to consolidate all 3 of those entities into one. The governor also implemented a hiring freeze in his first year, and he encouraged all directors to a strict standard. He challenged them to find more efficient ways to accomplish things, and every position that was refilled had to be approved by the governor's office. Next slide. So in the first fiscal year with that small merger, we saved $6 million in general revenue, over $136,000 in rent. We didn't fill 17 positions through attrition, and then there were 28 positions in those 3 entities that were unfilled that we surrendered back to the state as a result of this consolidation. Next slide. In December of 2016, the governor established the Office of Transformation and the Chief Transformation Officer. But because we didn't want to create bureaucracy, to reduce bureaucracy, I held 2 jobs concurrently for the next 2 years with no increase in salary. I was the executive vice
Ms.
president.
Fetcher, can I pause you for a second? We're getting feedback that our online participants cannot hear the online presenter. So I don't know if LSO or whoever's broadcasting it, if they need to allow the audio to go through the live stream, but they're having difficulty hearing. Sorry, that's not your fault. We're trying to figure out on our side.
This slide, it's not on my end.
All right, we'll give it another go. Let's try that. If you can go ahead. Sorry, Ms. Fetcher. Continue on.
No, that's fine. So in December 2016, we established the Office of Transformation and the Chief Transformation Officer. I served in 2 roles as the Executive Vice President at the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, along with the Chief Transformation Officer. He announced his goal to find efficiencies. He didn't really talk about reorganizing state government at this point, but just that the office would be looking for ways to find efficiencies in state government. He did, however, say that no employee would lose a job as a result of transformation, and that was one of his goals. Next slide. In February of 2017, we announced a Transformation Advisory Board, and this was a voluntary board of 12 members that consisted of current state employees, retired state employees, legislators, business leaders from the private sector, and our lieutenant governor. And this group worked together for over a year, assessing the current state structure, hearing directly from state leaders, and learning more about other state agencies and how other governments were organized around the nation. Next slide. In March of 2018, he announced his intent to reorganize state government and that a plan would be released later that year. We worked for 2 years building a consensus among stakeholders, and some of the strategies we employed were just like I heard you speaking about at the beginning of the meeting. We established what we called My Idea, which was a website and also a phone line that any citizen in the state could call in with their idea of how to find efficiencies or suggestions for a better government. We engaged the legislature, both in person with leadership. We met with each one of the caucuses, and then we sent out a digital survey to all of the legislature asking for their input on transformation. We met with each one of the agencies, boards, and commissions, and we did strategic plans with those 42. At the time, we had 42 cabinet level agencies that reported directly to the governor. We had town halls around the state, and we met with special interest groups. One example, we met with many interest groups, but one of them was our Farm Bureau, which in Arkansas has a very strong legislative lobbying arm. And what we learned that they put out a policy book every year. And if any legislation is opposed, there's any opposition with their policy book and proposed legislation, then they have to be against it. So we worked for a whole year with 75 county committees and tried to build a policy book that would not be in opposition to our transformation plan, and we're successful in that. The governor sent a letter out electronically by email to every state employee trying to explain his direction and what he was trying to accomplish with transformation, and again, trying to reassure them that there would not be a loss of job just because of transformation. We did hire a consultant, PricewaterhouseCoopers, that came in to make a recommendation assessment of the current structure of government and then make a recommendation, but also that Transformation Advisory Board was working in tandem and making a recommendation as well. And then in October of 2018, we released a plan that would take the state from those 42 cabinet level agencies down to 15. It would also encompass over 200 boards and commissions within those 15 cabinet level agencies. Next slide. So when I came into the job as Chief Transformation Officer, one of the first things I asked for was, can I get an org chart of state government? And what I quickly found out after talking to several different people, there really was no org chart for state government. Our Office of Budget just looked at every entity that had a state budget. And if we looked at the governor's boards and commissions department, they looked at everything the governor was making appointments to. You could look through the legislature and look at the appropriations for different entities, but there really was no comprehensive org chart for state government. This is a diagram of just the 42, but then we had the additional 200 independent boards and commissions. Next slide. So after working for over 2 years, during the 2019 legislative session, The Transformation and Efficiencies Act was filed by Representative Andy Davis. It was 2,047 pages in length and was the largest bill filed in modern history. It's really the largest bill anyone can ever remember, but since I can't go back all the way to the beginning of statehood, we'll just say the largest bill in modern history. The next slide. So Act 910 passed in April of 2019 and was signed by the governor, and of our 135-member legislature, there was only one dissenting vote. Next slide. So after it passed, we had 3 months to set up a new structure for state government. So we formed what was called the Transformation Transition Team. This had 15 dedicated state employees from all over government, and they worked together to put together a framework and vision for the 15 new departments. We established department manuals for these 15 secretaries that gave them information on each one of their agencies, the directors, gave them the budgets for those agencies. It talked about things such as their fleet, real estate, where they owned business or owned entities or rented, all of the policies for those different entities, and we gave them strategic plans as well. Next slide. On July 1, 2019, Act 910 became law, and we began operating under the new structure. You can see the 15 departments there in this diagram. Some of the key characteristics that taking the 42 to 15 and consolidating those boards and commissions, we did leave a few what we call non-cabinet level independent agencies. Some of those are constitutionally separate, like our Game and Fish Commission or the Highway Commission. And then some of them, just because of their specialized nature, like our Ethics Commission, Public Service Commission, or the retirement systems, were all left independent. Next slide. Year one, our fiscal year goes July 1 to June 30. So in July of 2019 through the beginning the next year in 2020, we spent a lot of time on rebranding a common look and feel for state government. We wanted people, the citizens, that when they went to a website to be able to feel that common look and feel and understand that it was a part of their executive branch of state government. We did extensive training for our secretaries, and we had an aggressive reporting system. We asked the secretaries to evaluate their new departments and to make recommendations on things such as their fleet, their real estate, their staffing, and other issues. And then also one of the things we did was put together what we just called working groups across the departments. So like all of the chief of staffs for those 15 departments would meet monthly. And just have an open dialogue and discussion. All of the communication directors, all of your IT directors, and there were others, but we established these working groups across the 15 to really develop that culture of sharing information and learning from each other. And then at the beginning of 2020, we all know what happened with the pandemic, and it did slow some of our momentum in the transformation efforts. But one thing that was paramount to the success during that time was communicating with 15 secretaries and just a handful of directors, rather than having to communicate with over 200 entities. So it was one of the successes, and it was great timing on that effort. Next slide. So year 2 and 3, during the last couple of years of the governor's administration in 21 and 22, some of the efforts we continued was data center modernization, bringing all of our servers from all of those entities together under one state data center. Really worked on our shared services model in each department. So when you brought, like our Department of Commerce has 10 entities within it currently, you would bring all of your HR people, all of your finance people, all of the attorneys from those 10 entities together into one shared services model. We worked on co-locating all of the departments to be together, and then implementing department-wide and statewide policies. So I would say under the Hutchinson administration, we took step 1 to get the organizational structure. We operated on existing budgets. There were we were given no additional funding for any of the transformation efforts. And Governor Hutchinson, when he left office, he handed over to Governor Sarah Sanders, who took the ball and is running with it. And her Arkansas Forward project is implementing many more of the next steps of transformation. So that's just a quick overview of our 2.5-year process. I'm happy to answer any questions or, discuss any lessons that I feel like we learned throughout the process.
Thank you, Ms. Fetcher. Committee members, are there any questions right now? Senator Blaylock.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the information. This is insightful. I know at the beginning it had gone over just high level some of the numbers that were saved from just from some of the things that you found, but I'm curious, after almost 10 years into this, have you do you have an idea of the savings and even just the efficiency of the processes within the 15 departments that you set up?
Ms. Fetcher?
I do not have those numbers. Frankly, one of the issues that our legislature and the administration really had with transformation and in hindsight is that we were operating on existing budgets. So the budget on July 1, 2019, when the new structure went into effect, we were operating on budgets that had been set the previous year. So we had a biennial budget for 2 years, and we operated within that. I would encourage you to put something into it where you can track a savings. That was something that in the first few years we were not successful, and then I would not have the numbers under Governor Sanders' administration. But that was one thing, because the legislature really wanted to see the bottom line on the savings, and that was something that really we were unable to do in the first couple of years.
Thank you. Co-Chair Lakey.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Ms. Fetcher, so this effort was kind of led a little more and initiated a little more by the executive branch in your state in Arkansas. Can you talk to me or talk to us a little bit about the legislative side, how that collaboration was implemented and accomplished, ultimately a scary 2,000-page bill, but talk a little bit more about the legislative side of it.
Ms. Fetcher?
Yes. So we really met extensively with the leadership in the House and the Senate, and we had the Speaker of the House was on that Transformation Advisory Board, along with Representative Davis. And so we really had a lot of communication there. We met with each one of the caucuses, and then just tried to listen and to make compromises along the way and just build that consensus. The bill went through our state agencies committee through the legislature, and on the Senate end, we spent a lot of time in committee going through those 15 departments, and they had a lot of questions, and just tried to answer those and go through everything. There were a few changes that we made to the plan because of legislative ask. So just compromise and just working through and answering everyone's questions.
Okay, thank you. Representative Tanner?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Fetcher, I appreciate you coming on. This is exciting to see what you guys were able to accomplish. But I do see, kind of following up with Senator Lakey had stated, it is quite a bit different from going from the governor and the agencies kind of having to work with the governor at that point in time versus the legislature trying to task this. So hopefully we can figure out how that partnership will work within our state. My question is what were your biggest hurdles that you felt like that you kind of hit that were really hard to overcome? And then what would you have done differently now doing the process? What would you have changed within your process to actually speed up or be more effective?
Ms. Fetcher?
So I would say the consensus building is really the key component there. And I do see the differences led by legislature versus the administration. However, I'll say, just because those agencies are part of the executive branch did not make them always want to cooperate with the plan. because everyone thinks that, they should stay independent. Everyone thinks that they should report directly to the governor. But as you know, that's a terrible management system that's really unsustainable. Some of the things that as I was answering a while ago, I would really make sure that you have a tracking system for those efficiencies from day one. If the budgets are already set and you want to say, okay, after reorganization, we're going to save 10% or 20% or whatever, and we're not going to spend that much of the budget, because that was a real point of contention with the legislature. They wanted to see money turned back in versus, just what we tried to do was do more with the money we were given. And we did shrink the size of government, although no one lost a job through attrition. Through retirements. We didn't replace, I think it was around 2,000 positions the first couple of years. So we were really focusing on that, although we didn't do any kind of RIF. Other things I would say is just communicating with those state agencies, because anytime there's any kind of change, all of the state employees really get nervous. And we saw a lot of that. But we tried to stay in an open line of communication, working with our state employee benefits division, as well as Office of Personnel, just always putting out more information about it as we went through the process. Setting up a good system and having a department or an office that's going to track those changes the first couple of years is really important as you go through the effort.
Thank you. That's great. Further questions or any from our online committee members? Okay. I'm not seeing any further questions, but appreciate you taking your time. I know it's a little later there in Arkansas, but thank you for joining us, and thank you for sharing your presentation.
Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Committee, next up, going to hear from Greg Shank with the State Controller's Office. He's going to give us a brief overview of Transparent Idaho and help us find the data. Part of this is I think we're going to have some questions as a committee as we go through that maybe we'll be able to use this data to find our own answers, or we might have to go back and make requests of the Controller's Office. But Mr. Shank, if you could introduce yourself for the record and then make your presentation.
Now, Mr. Chairman, for the record, I am Greg Shank from the Office of the State Controller. Is it possible to run the mouse, or do you need to do it?
No, I'm setting it up so
Okay,
you can do it.
excellent. Thank you. Thank you. I am the Division Administrator of the Computer Services Center at the State Controller's Office. And I was heavily involved in the construction of at least the first two generations of this website. The one you're seeing now is actually the third iteration, because we've added content and modified it a little bit through the years. But I still know quite a lot about it, and so Controller Wolf asked me to come over and to present at least some of the features to you this afternoon. Transparent Idaho was a vision of the Controller several years ago, because he wanted the public to have an avenue whereby they could see the goings-on of their government. And he wanted the government to be open to the people and available to the people, and he wanted to engender a level of trust from the citizens of the state. I've heard him say that several times through the years as we were building this site. And so one of the first things that we did was we stood up workforce data so that people could know who works for them and what they do and how much we pay them to do it and how long they've been doing it and how many of them there are. And then the next thing, we presented financial information about the state. What businesses and what individuals are conducting business with the state, and how much business, and what kinds of things are we buying from them, and when are we buying it. And that's the kind of information that you will see out here on the site. Now, an important caveat. We have stood up a select number of data items to present to the public, carefully selected data items to show. There is much, much more, however, in the Luma ERP system. And towards that end, we've taken much of that data and we have loaded it into a data warehouse, and we've aimed a very high-end business intelligence tool at that data so that state employees can consume reports either that we have built, pre-built, or they can ad hoc on-demand build them themselves. So I say that so that you know this, and Mr. Tatro, so that you know this. And you've dealt with IBIOS for a long time, so it's that. If you have additional information that you cannot find on Transparent Idaho, reach out to us and we can assist you in either getting it from our data warehouse or from another tool, maybe the Luma system itself. Okay, so with that, then let's start to look at the site. One of the first and most often used features of the site is this search bar. So I want to go in there and I can type in, can you type in the word fish for me? I type in fish, and now it's going to show me. Now, I'm looking at the state workforce here. I could also look at vendor payments, as you can see. But it's going to show you several things that are actually helpful right off the bat. The first thing it's showing you is the agency, the Department of Fish and Game. It's showing you any agency that has the word fish in the agency name. Then it's going to show you all of the employees who have fish in their name and tell you whether they are a former employee or whether they are a current employee. And you will see there is, you got to be careful where you move the mouse, there is a shocking number, that is sensitive, of employees who have fish in their name. Now, if you get all the way to the bottom of this list, you will notice that it's also giving job titles. So it's giving agency names, it's giving employee names, or it's giving job titles for people like fisheries managers and things like that. And you can click on one of these. It will open a report in another window and give you the information about, say, if you clicked on an employee, about that person, how long they've worked at the agency, how much they're making. In fact, it will give you a history of their employment to show you what agencies they ever worked at and what they were doing at those agencies and how much they were making when they started, when they stopped. So that is used frequently to figure out, just to get information about individuals or about vendors. That's one of the easiest places to go to get information from the site. Now, this committee is for the most part going to be concerned with...
Mr. Schenk, we got
Yes,
a
sir.
question for you.
Yes, sir.
Co-Chair Lakey.
Thanks, Co-Chair. Mr. Schenk. So the website shows individuals, their compensation, their position. Does it show funded positions and salaries, but there's not an employee in that slot, so to speak? In other words, can you see vacant positions and what they're funded at?
Mr. Schenk?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, Co-Chair Lakey, this part of the site does not show that. It only shows people who have, or positions who have an individual in them. So this one does not show a vacant. We can get that information, but that's not here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
All right. So for the most part, this committee is going to be concerned with state information, which I understand. Just before I get there, though, I want to show you a couple of these other things, just so you know they're kind of out there, and I just highlight them a little bit. If I go to the county page, you can see we've got all the counties and their state seals, or their seals, county seals. And I could go on any of them and get to information, or I could go here and get to some information about the counties in general. And if I scroll up a little bit, I come to something that I kind of like. I've always thought this was a very neat feature that we put on the site. We've got a map of all of the different counties. And it's always been fascinating to me how these counties got their shapes and the history of how they would get their shapes. And if you mouse over a particular county, you can see those three metrics: the size of the county, the population of the county, and the budget of the county. So as I move, it changes, and you can see that once I get over here to Ada and County, or Canyon, you can imagine that those would be large counties and so on and so forth. If I go off, I'm back to the population of the state. We've now passed 2 million, I believe, but this population data is about a year old, and we'll be updating it soon, and then we will probably show that we've passed the 2 million mark. Okay, so that's county information, and if I scroll it down, I would get some various reports about the individual counties. If I go to city information, I'm getting something similar. We don't have a map of the cities, but I can get information about individual cities. I can compare them and contrast them and that type of thing. Local districts is something that I think is very informative for people because not everybody understands this. And if I go down here to my local districts and scroll down through here, I get to something that I think is very interesting. People can understand the different types of special districts that are in the state of Idaho, abatement districts and agricultural commissions and so on and so forth. And this prompt is actually driven from the prompt in front of it. So now I'm looking at abatement districts, and I could see the different abatement districts. I could pull up reports about those districts. If I go down here to agricultural commissions, this prompt then changes, and now I'm seeing the different commissions that are available. So I think this is educational for people because they don't necessarily, they understand state, county, city, but they wouldn't necessarily understand some of these local and special districts. And at the top of this, again, are some metrics to show there are 36 different types, 49 local government registries, and 979 tax districts. Okay. And then, of course, over here is this topic that is the lead on every legislative session ever in the world, education, and we have information about salaries and expenses from an educational standpoint. All right. So let me go then to the state and demonstrate some of this, because again, I think that's where this committee will be most interested. If I want information about an agency, I can go right down here, click in here, and I am taken right to a list of agencies. I'll scroll down just a little bit, and here you see Department of Administration, Department of Ag, so on and so forth. I could click here, and I could start to get information about an individual agency. And of course, there are, almost 100 of them in the state, and you can go through and get your list. Or I can get an overall view of the state, and that's where I'm going to go for these purposes today, if I can. There we go. Go down here to an overview. And now it's going to start to talk about the state data, and it has some quick links. You can jump out to Town Hall, Idaho, which is where we store our meeting information, public meetings, public records, state agreements and contracts, vendor payments, so on and so forth with the quick links. Some information about the state budgeting process, how it's prepared, when it's prepared, the different phases that it goes through. That information is there. State financial data. Now it's starting to demonstrate information about the budget and information, as I scroll down through here, some different kinds of reports that are canned reports that you can click on any of this and get into detailed information and filter on it and really manipulate it any way that you want if you have the knowledge of how to do that. And I'm going to go into one of these reports here in just a little bit and show you some more of that information. But so revenues.
We got a question for you
Yes,
before
sir.
we go there. Representative Tanner?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate you being here. So I spent quite a bit of time on Transparent Idaho. The toughest thing for me is actually, I can see the transaction. I can see relatively who got the expenditure from the vendor expense, which account it came out of, the incoming funds from whether a sub-grant or some other thing. But one of the things you can't see is like a description of what it was actually done. And I know the Trump administration has come out because a lot of this came out with the USDA when we just saw numbers flying around, and similar to what Transparent Idaho showed, it was like count, expenditure, very little data. What it was expended for, you couldn't pretty much figure it out. And I've actually had to go back to agencies, and sometimes they were actually struggle to actually tell me what some of these expenditures were. Now, if the legislature were to actually add something in to give a description, kind of like what Trump has now done it within D.C., how difficult is that for you guys to incorporate within Transparent Idaho? And is that something you guys are looking at and implementing at some point in time?
Mr. Schenk?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Tanner, you are touching on a subject that we talked about quite a bit as we were standing up this data. We debated whether we would put invoice description out there for the public to be able to see, because that gives a further description of what did we really buy, right? We ended up not doing that because we couldn't necessarily control what kind of data people were putting in invoice description. And sometimes they would put information in there that was actually confidential. And we were concerned that we wouldn't know it and that it would end up out there on Transparent Idaho and we wouldn't want it to be there. And so Controller Wolf and his chief of staff at the time, Josh Whitworth, we kicked this around quite a bit and decided that to be cautious, we would not show invoice description to the public, understanding the trade-off. However, for an individual such as yourself, we absolutely can get a field like that. Or, towards your point, if we had another field you're mentioning, could we get it in Transparent Idaho? I'm certain that we could.
Representative Tanner, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, thank you,
Okay, go
Mr.
ahead.
Chairman. Well, it sounds like some of the agencies maybe need to do some training and not maybe put things in there that are confidential in that aspect. But all of those documents are public records requested. I mean, anybody can public records request them, so they should be able to be put out there. And if they are putting stuff out there they shouldn't, then whichever employee put that out, put that on there. If it was confidential, then that would be the problem. I think the only confidentiality aspect that you're going to probably have to worry about is if it's somebody's specific name, a payment going to somebody specific within a certain aspect, but that is not a state employee. But besides that, I mean, it's just public money. We should be able to see every last detail we possibly can. So is this something the legislature needs to take up, or is this something that you guys can actually implement without legislative action?
Mr. Schenk?
Yes. Mr. Chairman and Representative Tanner, I would recommend a conversation with Controller Wolf. And if he decides that that's a direction that we want to go, then we can certainly, it's there to be had, and we can certainly put it there. And that's it.
Okay.
As far as I can take that.
Representative Scott has her hand up. Go ahead, Representative.
All right, thank you. I think just to follow up on that last comment, I'm really interested in the same thing. I love your site. I love what you guys have been doing. And I've worked with the state controller quite a bit on some legislation. But when you go into your contracts and your agreements, there's so many agreements, and we would have to records request every one of them. Is there a simpler way that we as legislators can look at those contracts or memorandums of understanding without having to request every single one?
Mr. Schenk?
Yes. Mr. Chairman, Representative, let me get back to you on that. I'll take it as a note and have conversations and see what we can find out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Senator Lakey.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So, Mr. Schenk, we've got this lengthy working document that we're looking at with all the various boards and agencies and commissions. Is the budget information over time part of what we can find on Transparent Idaho as far as how much they were budgeted, expenditures, and so on for each of these things?
Mr. Schenk?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Lakey, yes, it is. We can show you budget information on those things.
Okay, thank you. Additional? Yeah, go ahead.
Follow up, just for clarification, Mr. Schenk. So is it something that I need to go to you to get more on, or is it something that I can find as I click through it on my own?
Mr. Schenk?
Mr. Chairman, Representative, you can certainly go through the site and see what you can find. Absolutely, if you're not finding what you need, reach out, and we will help you find it. We'd be glad to.
Representative Tanner?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the AG just came out. I mean, he had a recent court victory when it came to some of the funds and the misuse of some of the funds that the legislature had actually stated one thing. The agencies went out and kind of did their own thing, and there was obviously some misappropriations of funds. Is there a way within your guys' system, or is there a way within what you guys can actually do to flag maybe inappropriate payments that go out, or things as the legislature have stated very clearly, and actually flag those so we can see some of those? Because the one that I'm referring to in the one the AG's case aspect was the community partner grants. Is there a way that those actually can get flagged prior, or is this just somebody just happens to stumble across it and then go, what the heck?
Mr. Schenk.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Tanner, the answer is going to be a qualified yes. We are in the process of installing a module in the Luma ERP system that is called Governance, Risk, and Compliance. And it comes in 3 stages. And the 3rd stage is a transactional check, like what you're talking about, that searches for things like this, fraudulent kinds of things, and will help us bring those to light. So yes, when that module is stood up, and it's targeted to be stood up probably this fiscal year, we will be in a better position to find those things, right? Then another reason why actually we built Transparent Idaho was to help try to bring some of that to light, or so that people would understand that, you know, what I do is going to have a light shined on it to act as a deterrent in that regard as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Representative.
Follow up. So there are, I've kind of been doing some research on the AI aspect of things. There's a company that's actually, I can't remember what state they've currently signed up with, but they're going to run this through similar to a Transparent Idaho as transactions, or potentially a Luma. The transactions actually going to go through, trying to catch some of the outliers, the anomaly ones, the questionable transactions. Is that something that you guys are looking at, or is that something that you would need direction from the legislature on?
Mr. Schenk.
Yes. Mr. Chairman, Representative, we are absolutely looking at it, even doing some proof of concept on that very thing.
That's great. As co-chair of the AI committee, I really like that use case for AI. Representative Scott, go ahead.
Thank you. I just have one other question. For your vendor payments, something that I've noticed is that when somebody puts something, like if you put a hotel name in and just say the Best Western, and you call it the Best Western, and then you could also call it Best Western, and there's nothing in your program that actually combines the two. So if I was in the system and I wanted to do something fraudulent, I could put my expense twice and double bill the state. Is there anything in your programs or what you're dealing with, or this new program you talked about, that addresses entry and the ways things are entered and does kind of checks like that?
Mr. Schenk.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Scott, the specific use case of I've monkeyed with the name and double entered it is something that I wouldn't be able to answer here without researching. So let me make a note of that as well and talk to the Luma people who are in the financial area and see what I can learn about it, and if the GRC module that I mentioned earlier will help with this kind of thing. But let me make a note of that. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Senator Lakey.
Thank you, Co-Chair Mr. Schenk. So were you here during the Arkansas presentation?
Mr. Schenk.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Lakey, I was here for the majority of it.
Question then, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So, Mr. Schenk, part of what Ms. Fetcher talked about was, and I think Senator Blaylock mentioned it, some type of measurement tool that we need to have in place at the beginning to help us track efficiency as we work over time. Obviously, we'd have to figure out what those criteria are, but is that something that you see that could be handled as part of Transparent Idaho, or is that not in your lane?
Mr. Schenk.
Mr. Chairman, Senator Lakey, yes, we can help. We can help you anyway in that. Absolutely.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Schenk, it sounds like we're going to have some follow-up conversations with you, or if you've heard some of our requests. We're getting low on the time we have allocated for you, so I'm wondering if maybe you could just kind of wrap up with some things that might be helpful to the DOGE committee that you wanted to share. If you take the next couple minutes.
Mr. Chairman, certainly. Yes, so if you scroll to the bottom of the state information, you will come to this travel report, and then it opens up in a separate tab. And sometimes the reports open very quickly, sometimes they take a little bit longer. And here you can see that there's a report on different travel expenses broken out by this criteria. I'll just show you a couple things quickly in the interest of time. I can export this data as a CSV as long as I'm not trying to export more than 50,000 rows. And at the bottom, it will tell you how many rows. So that would be too big right there to export. We could get you that if you wanted all of those rows, or you can break it down with certain filter criteria and export 50,000 rows. You can manage the columns here that you want to see if you don't want to see everything. You can look at a summary view of the transactions this way, or a detailed view. If you want to filter, then one of the nice things about this tool, you can literally filter any column that you want by going here and typing in your filter, and you have different choices. The Best Western situation, I could do a contains and say Best Western. Then it doesn't matter whether they have called it the Best Western or Best Western, it's going to find it. Or I can search for anything that's in here, type in something, and it's going to give me a list of agencies. I can click on different agencies, and it will filter down on those things. And let me see if I have anything else that I really wanted to tell you about. The only other thing that I'll show, and then I will be done. This right now is showing you fiscal year, and that's because this is fiscal year right here. I can literally flip this if I want. Let me change. Maybe I can. Let me change that to account summary, and let me change that to fiscal year. Now it flipped the X and the Y axis so that I've got this now this way by fiscal year. And if I go to the summary, it's going to show that. See, it flipped my rows and my columns. And so I have different choices for how I want to build this report. Actually, quite a lot of combinations by playing with these different kinds of row and column filter. So, thank you.
Okay.
And
Thank
I encourage you to play around with the site and ask us any questions that you've got.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Schenk. Appreciate the presentation, and I imagine we'll be reaching out to the Controller's Office with additional questions and data requests as they come up from this committee. Next, we have some time for public testimony, and we wanted to hear from the public on their ideas for DOGE and anything they may see or ideas or suggestions to look at. We're going to take those that are in person first. In the interest of time, we're going to limit this to 2 minutes, and we'll just go down the order, and then we have some online presenters as well from the public that wanted to speak. So we'll go ahead. When you come up, if you could introduce yourself for the record by name, and then if you represent an organization or an entity, if you could state that as well. You don't need to state your address or where you live necessarily, just your name and who you represent. So let's start with Brian Allman. If you could come forward, introduce yourself for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brian Allman. I'm representing myself today. I won't take up 2 minutes. I just want to start this public testimony off by saying that this is a unique moment. I think this committee and the legislature as a whole has a unique opportunity here. There's a lot of folks who are expecting really great things. They might be disappointed that you don't walk away from today's meeting ready to abolish government. But I think there are some significant things that can be done, based on what the person from Arkansas demonstrated. So I would just urge the members of the committee who are here and watching online to really take advantage of this and, put your hearts and souls into this, because I think it could, hopefully be long lasting. They said that this is the first big reorganization effort or reform effort since the 70s. Hopefully what you do here can echo for the next 50 years as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Next up is Daniel Murphy. You wrote down sure if you wanted to testify, so I'm taking that as a yes. So if you could introduce yourself for the record, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Excuse me, Daniel Murphy, Boise, Idaho. Thanks. Some of my legislator friends have posted on social media that the Idaho state budget has bloated to the tune of around 45% in the last few years. In JFAC, they have a keep the lights on budget for entities, as we know. Let's say a state entity gets $10 for the fiscal year. So if they only use $8, instead of turning back the extra dollars, many entities will find a way to spend the extra $2 to keep their lights on budget. And I think that can be changed, in my opinion. I've called on the Speaker and the Pro Tem to pass a 20% reduction across the board. If that's a little bit too much, maybe 10%. Okay, we need to rein in on some of our expenses. I also think H24, the launch program, needs to be repealed. There are other options, like, for instance, the military. They train service members for so many jobs that relate to civilian life. Not only that, they can have some of their student loans wiped off. They can have the GI Bill when they get off. They get medical care through the VA. There's a lot of opportunity in the where's my time? I can't see it.
You have about 35 seconds.
Okay. So anyways, yeah, that's a good opportunity. Let's say a person wants to become an electrician. He or she can just go to a big electrician company, start at the bottom like my son did. Okay. He was started as an electrician, pulling wires. He got trained and he moved up the ladder. Now he has a really great job in the concert lighting business where he's really prospering. So there's a lot of avenues other than DOGE. I don't think, excuse me, other than the launch program. So that's just one entity I think we need to consider. And I guess that's all I have to say for now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Murphy. Right at 2 minutes. Thank you. Next up, Jackie Davidson. Ms. Davidson, if you could introduce yourself for the record, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, committee members. My name is Jackie Davidson, and I'm Precinct Committeeman 1614. And I just wanted to say that I believe this is a really good thing. It's huge. After looking at that Arkansas stuff, what I would like to do is I would like to offer, since I'm a citizen, District 16, that if you have any issues, if you have like any grunt work that you don't want to do, like go through and check on something, I'd like to offer my services as a volunteer. Okay?
Thank you.
Jackie Davidson, Idaho at protonmail.com.
Okay.
Okay.
Ms. Davidson, thank you.
Okay.
And I believe we have your contact info, or we can get it. So thank you very much. Okay. Next, we have people that registered online, but potentially they're remote. Some of them might actually be in person. So I think we're going to try remote, but if you're here in person, if you could please come forward to the podium instead. First up, we have Brenda Gilchrist. Are you here or are you online? Online? Okay. We'll get you pulled up here. And Ms. Gilchrist, if you could also introduce yourself for the record. Just waiting for...
Hello, this is Brenda.
Okay. Go ahead. If you could introduce yourself, and you'll have 2 minutes.
Sure. I'm Brenda Gilchrist, and I'm writing to express my strong support for the newly established Idaho Department of Government Efficiency. As an expert in optimization assessments within the private sector, with my specialty in reorganization, transformation, resource allocation, I look at doing job analysis and job design and staffing restructuring. I am particularly encouraged to see this initiative take shape in Idaho. I think Idaho State's government, it stands to benefit immensely from a focused effort to streamline operations and enhance accountability. I commend the legislative leaders for advancing this task force. And despite, I know there was some early legislative hurdles with that, but I do plan to follow your progress closely. I'm thrilled at the prospect of witnessing your efforts. And should the task force seek input from a private sector expert like myself, I would be eager to contribute insights in optimizing workflows, redesigning roles for maximum impact, and building lean staffing models to prioritize operational excellence. The one thing I did have a question about, and maybe someone can determine this, is Tanner had mentioned that there was or Representative Tanner mentioned that there may have been some misuse. And I thought, what if we do find, or your task force finds, there's misuse of federal funds? Does the state have to pay that back to the feds? It's just one of my questions. Like, once we do start to find some of these things, do we need to pay things back to the federal government? But I appreciate what you're doing, and I really appreciate being able to provide this public testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Gilchrist. Appreciate that. I think Representative Tanner is going to give us an answer here. And then one comment I would make for the public in general, if you do, as you're searching through Transparent Idaho or aware of misuse of funds, please contact us or use the DOGE website, legislature.idaho.gov/DOGE, as a way to get us in touch and looking at that. Representative Tanner?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the question. So the answer is yes and no. So on that particular one that I actually had mentioned, it was no. We're actually legislator-driven initiative. So the legislature actually put the limitations on what we wanted to see happen to that. So it did meet the federal requirements. Now, when you look into certain things within like health and welfare, there are times where there's things that we've actually done where that were actually done incorrect, and in a sense, we owed that back, and we were billed back for that.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your public testimony. Next up, we have Fred Birnbaum. Believe he's online. Okay. So, Mr. Birnbaum, if you could introduce yourself for the record, who you represent, and then you'll have 2 minutes of testimony. We'll get you pulled up here first. Sorry, there's a delay. Committee members, you should have received an email from Mr. Birnbaum as well with a PDF. I think that's in front of everyone at this point. Yes, we can hear you now, so go ahead with your testimony. And if you can introduce yourself.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is Fred Birnbaum with the Idaho Freedom Foundation. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I want to state at the outset that we do plan to submit some very concrete written recommendations for savings as it relates to the mission of DOGE. But today I want to talk about something slightly different. And I'm sorry the public doesn't have what you have before you, so I'll try to be clear. There's an old saying, what gets measured gets managed. And one of the concerns I had as I reviewed the post-session budget documents is that there are about $2 to $3 billion of continuous appropriations. An example of the continuous appropriations, or one that was made, is the school district's facilities fund. And why does this matter? Well, I think if you hark back to the Arkansas presentation, obviously it was a lot of work, it was a massive bill, but I was struck by the fact that the presenter couldn't actually speak to what was saved. And generally the yardstick is dollars. So, the budget went from X to Y. We didn't hear any of that. And Idaho and LSO has done a very good job of capturing the proposed budgets, the actual appropriations, and the expenditures, except for continuous appropriations. And the reason this is important, Mr. Chairman, I know you have a financial background, there's the old term apples to apples. And if you're comparing fiscal year 25 to 26, but in fiscal year 26, you don't have the school district facilities fund in the budget, it's going to depress the percentage. So I believe this committee very clearly needs to recommend that we have apples to apples comparisons, and not just in arrears, but going forward. So I realize it sounds like this is a very accounting heavy request, but I do believe accurate measurements are the foundation for determining whether, at least in the financial world, change has been successful. I mean, obviously companies do it, they talk about earnings,
Mr. Birnbaum,
et cetera.
Your 2 minutes is up. If you could go ahead and wrap up and make your closing point.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In the document, you will see a very long list of things that are continuously appropriated. And my request is that this committee recommend to JFAC or the body in general expose for our review continuous appropriations. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll stand for questions.
Committee, seeing none at this time. Thank you for your testimony and for that document. Next up, we have Heather Bush. She's online as well, so we'll get that pulled up. Still working on that, it looks like. Not accepting. Ms. Bush, if you are online, I think you need to accept the Zoom request from our administrator to be able to speak. Okay. Maybe she's declined then. All right. Next, Peter Radatic. Not sure if I pronounced that right. We do not have him registered or online at the moment. Are you here in the audience? Does not look like it. Okay. Last signed up is Sergey Brown. Is Sergey online or in the audience? Online? Okay. We'll get him pulled up. Mr. Brown, if you could introduce yourself for the record. So let's see, we're still getting you pulled up here. Oh, Mr. Brown, you need to unmute, if you could, please.
There we go.
There we go. All right. If you could introduce yourself for the record and who you represent, if anyone, and then you'll have 2 minutes.
Committee, my name is Sergey Brown. I'm the founder of the Clear Skies Movement, and I'm here to ask an honest question. Will DOGE solve problems or simply recycle them? This Department of Government Efficiency Task Force, born from the ashes of House Bill 364, which incidentally failed earlier this year, claims to target government waste. But Idahoans deserve to know if this is genuine reform or just another bureaucratically delay, while real waste goes unaddressed. I spoke with Ryan Langrill earlier today, director of the Office of Performance Evaluations, the OPE, and his department has already done the heavy lifting, identifying over $30 million in savings, $11 million in long-term transportation efficiencies, $20 million in one-time cuts, and $6 million in reoccurring annual savings. This was achieved through an existing oversight committee, not a new task force. Yet there are legislative efforts to curb OPE's independence. I'm curious why we weaken the one office exposing real savings. Let's talk about real waste. Idaho's natural infrastructure, from the Tetons to the Snake River Plain. We can recharge our reservoirs and aquifers. Prioritizing these systems could ensure water for every farmer and not just big farms. So why are we funding cloud seeding at $3+ million a year, spraying silver iodide into the sky without public consent or comprehensive long-term health studies or damage concerns like what we just saw happen in Texas and New Mexico, while ignoring the water beneath our feet? If this task force won't confront these contradictions, if it won't name the names or cut the dead weight or defend OPE's oversight, then it's not really reform. It's more of a distraction. Idaho doesn't need another committee. It needs resolve, transparency, and the courage to manage our resources with integrity, not manipulate nature.
Thank you, Mr. Brown, for your testimony. Your 2 minutes is up. Committee, I don't see any questions there. Representative Scott, did you have a question? Or you raised your hand?
Sure.
Or,
yeah. Maybe just a comment to Sergey. Maybe he doesn't understand. Sergey, we are in office for about 3 months where we are voting on 600 bills. By doing this interim committee, it gives us the opportunity to dig deeper into these issues that we have not been able to before. We just don't have the time during session. This will help us hyper focus on issues like you're talking about we will be able to dig into the actual money being spent on weather modification or where that leads us by spending more time by getting your public input and being able to do it now. So I would just encourage you to be patient with us and let the system work. And I truly believe you're going to see some big things out of this committee. So I know I'm committed to digging deep, and I think the others are too. So I wouldn't be discouraged, and I'd, stay off the social media. Maybe the social media attacks on anything in government. This is really the best way that legislators can look into the executive branch. So thanks for your testimony today, and I'm happy to follow up with you later.
I would appreciate that, and thank you so much for the clarification.
Thank you, and thank you, Representative Scott. So that's all we had for sign up for public testimony. I did sign up, but I don't know if it's showing. Okay, I don't see it. Maybe it was a late arrival. So, sure, we'll do one more. If you could come introduce yourself for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes. Go ahead.
David Pettinger, District 14. I'm excited about this committee. This might be my favorite committee that I've ever seen in the legislature, because if there's one thing this committee will get to, it's that government is worth less. I'm not saying you are worth less. I'm saying that government is worth less, meaning that it is worth less of our dollars than we are currently giving the government. Where is it worth less? Well, I'll give you a few examples. It's worth less in quagga mussels. Does anyone remember the quagga mussel? Well, the quagga mussel took a lot of funds for us to be experimented on. And what did those experiments of nitrics in the Snake River prove? It proved that we could kill all of our fish. Well, where did those fish come from? The fish come from our fisheries. Who pays for those fisheries? The Idaho taxpayers. Who pays for Idaho Fish and Game? The Idaho taxpayers. Who pays for Idaho Parks and Recreation? The Idaho taxpayers. So instead of letting the people receive from their tax dollars and fish unlimited in the Snake River, we decided to kill all the fish because this was the experiment that our governor wanted upon the state of Idaho. And he brought many different, stakeholders into this. But so that's one thing I'd like DOGE. Also, I'd like DOGE. Is Holland and Hart still the legislative representation for the Idaho legislature? Because if they are, there's a serious conflict of interest, because now they are defending Lauren McLean in the city of Boise against HB 96, which is a law that this legislature passed. So we now have a conflict of interest of Holland and Hart, who this legislature employs, fighting against legislation in the state of Idaho. So that's another thing that I'd like DOGE. How much money are we giving to Holland and Hart? Second or third, can we stop passing bills that have no teeth? We passed the library bill, worthless. We passed the flag bill, worthless. We passed the school bill, worthless. Can we pass some bills that have some teeth? Because none of these agencies are doing anything about it. From the Attorney General to the Sheriff to Boise Police down to the library boards, nothing is happening
Mr.
on
Pinger,
any
we're at
of those
2
issues.
minutes, if you could wrap up.
That's all I have to say. There's plenty to DOGE. I can give you much more. Very happy to be here and very happy that you guys are looking into it. Let's be a conservative state. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your public testimony. Is there anyone else that had wanted to testify that we missed? I'm not seeing any more hands. Everybody's looking at each other, trying to get their neighbor to testify. Okay. Guess not. And she's looking at the back list. Okay. All right. We'll close public testimony then. The next part of our agenda, I'd just like to take a few minutes to hear from the committee members. Maybe I'll outline it first. We discussed at the start, the legislative leadership direction that we've given us to focus on 3 areas about agencies and departments, employees, and then travel. But I know many of our committee has some of their ideas too, or we've heard from public input, or maybe from our own constituents in our districts of things we might want to look at, or thoughts or ideas on the direction you want to go. So if anybody on the committee would like to comment on that right now, now's the time for us to have an open discussion about some of our priorities and where we want to focus on. All right, Senator Lakey, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I didn't see any other lights, so I had a few takeaways from what we heard today. I think the first one is we need to explore that measurement tracking tool for efficiency. With perhaps the state controller's office, it sounded like Mr. Schenk thought that could be in their lane. Also interested in, again, it's more executive branch, but a number of employees, vacant positions, compensation for those positions. Mr. Brown mentioned that OPE has some reports already on government efficiency. I think it would be worthwhile to hear from OPE as far as what studies they've done and what their recommendations are. And then I think I'd also like to hear from DOPL as far as their recommendation on some of those boards, commissions, where they see potential for efficiency. Again, there's been some good effort over the last couple of years to combine boards to help reduce licensing requirements, make things easier for those, again, that want to practice their profession. But really appreciate some of the comments today and want to take some of those to heart and work on those things as the initial part of our committee work.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Committee members, or any of you online virtually that wanted to comment, any more additional thoughts or priorities on this committee? Okay, Representative Tanner.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I have two things that I wanted to kind of look into. One, the legislature this last year made huge momentum in moving rules to statute and kind of the regulatory reform. And so I was going to try to see if we can task OPE, maybe Mr. Tatro, of looking into some of those where we can actually start moving some more of that to cleaning up some of that, those statutes, those rules, and actually moving them, or those rules and actually moving them, continue moving them over in statute. Secondly, I wanted to first off thank DFM for their 2 to 6% budget reduction plan that they've requested had agencies look at. I'm curious if we can get LSO to maybe get some of those public records and maybe help give us a roadmap where we can see some of that success for this next session coming up.
Okay, thank you. Senator Lakey.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. I thought of one other thing, and I'll acknowledge right out of the gate that I'm not on JFAC. I'm more of a policy guy. I went to law school and not an accountant school. And so I am looking forward to some education on the JFAC process, and I wondered if we might also get some information on what Mr. Birnbaum mentioned as far as continuous appropriation compared to existing and how that works and how we might be able to track that.
Okay, thank you. Sounds like we're putting together a pretty good agenda for the second meeting right here with some ideas and other presenters. Committee members, any other additional comments or anybody on our committee online raising their hand? I know for one, I have a lot of data requests that I'm going to make. And committee members, maybe you don't have the ideas right now. Maybe I'll hit you like in the middle of the night sometime. You're thinking about something and, oh, we got to look into this. So if you could send those requests to the co-chairs so we can sort of filter and make sure we're not duplicating work or making sure we're sticking to the priorities of the committee and don't spread ourselves too thinly, that'd be great. Okay, before I carry on, Representative Scott, go ahead.
Thank you. I do want to make sure that, we set up this portal for citizens to give their concerns. And I want to make sure that we address all of those concerns and look into what the people have. I know we have a big lift with all these agencies under the governor's office, but I do think we need to look into claims of corruption, whether that's turning it back over to some other agency to look into But if we start to get a lot of feedback from the public, which I'm guessing we will, I don't want that to slip through the cracks because we're focusing on how many employees we're going to get rid of or consolidate or what have you. So I just want to keep that on the radar. And maybe at the next meeting we can, have whatever comments we can summarize them for the committee so we can see where things are with that.
Yeah, thank you, Representative Scott. I know LSO is going to work on compiling those and getting them to us, and I think we can talk about how we're transparent with those and how we can take action items to address those, or ensure they're delegated to the right authority or the right person that needs to address those. So that point is very well taken. One thing I think committees we've discussed, some of the things I'd like, and I'm going to make this to LSO as well. I have a lot of data I want around FTPs and vacancies. I want to look at, there's a lot of things there, so I'm going to start compiling my list as well, and we'll get that and make those requests. I want to start looking at balance sheets and assets. You didn't go to accounting school, Senator Lakey. You missed out on a lot of fun, but those are some things that I want to take a look at. What does the state actually own? What's in that ownership and our assets? And a lot of the work I think will be done outside of this committee in terms of like just doing homework and digging into things. We'd like to meet pretty frequently. I don't know, maybe monthly. We'll figure out the right cadence so we can keep things moving and keep the public aware of what we're doing and the progress that we're making. But I think there are also going to be things in between meetings where we're looking at the data and we're diving into things, or maybe visiting with appropriate parties about different things. Representative Scott, you have your hand up again. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. One more thing I just thought of is when we start to dig into these agencies, I would really like to look if there's things that our agencies are doing that could be better done by the private sector. Are we hiring janitors as state employees, or are we subcontracting that out to a business that maybe runs a small business? And so I definitely want to, that would be a way to reduce the size of government and help our economy at the same time. So that's something I want as we dig deeper. I don't know if we'll get that to that level this year, but as we start digging into these agencies, I think that would be something we could look at that would help stimulate our economy too and help small business.
Okay, thank you, Representative Scott. We're taking notes on all these too, and thank you. Anything else? Representative Tanner, go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, this was actually just a question for something that you stated regarding the FTPs. So what exactly are you going to try to dig into? Are you going to look at more, because some of the things that I actually struggle with in the FTPs is, are they actually funded FTPs? Are they non-funded FTPs? Are they just sitting on the books to allow them to put out requests to actually hire somebody because they have such a large turnover? Or are these funded FTPs? Or are these FTPs that are actually getting, that the funds have actually been taken for salary savings someplace else? So that's where I'm trying to get to, and I don't know if that's where you were at on that as well.
Yeah, I think so, and I think this is why we should all compile our requests and look at them, because that may add on to some of the things I'm looking at. But vacancies, length of vacancies is something I'm interested in. Some other things, sort of managed or administrative versus, what's the right ratio there, right? Are we top heavy on some of these FTPs? We have job title inflation. I don't know, things like there's all sorts of ways we could go. So I think if we compile all the list of the data that we want and then submit it and make the requests with some deadlines to get that back, then I think we can really start getting some answers to these things. Okay. Anything further from the committee members? Co-Chair Lakey, anything you wanted to add? We'll go to the closing then. And I'll say we'll be in touch about the next committee meeting. We'll check schedules and get that, but go ahead. Co-Chair Lakey.
Co-Chair, I think I've kind of covered what I want to see for going forward in our next meeting. So I appreciate everyone being here today. We appreciate those that offered comment, and look forward to hearing more.
Thank you. Yeah, appreciate everybody on the committee. Appreciate our staff. I know we're going to put you to work. We're going to put everybody to work on this committee. We got a lot of hard work before us and a lot of work outside these meetings, but I'm actually looking forward to the type of work that this committee can do and the results that we can get for our state of Idaho. With that, committee, stay tuned for when we'll hold our next meeting, and this committee will be adjourned.